computer. Hello, Stephen. Welcome to this time to chat again with me. I'm excited to be here with you. Um, Please introduce yourself so the audience will know who you are, and then we could chat.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Stephen Towill and I'm a hypnotherapist based in Scotland in the UK. So I work clinically a lot with people, helping them with anxieties, fears, but also I specialize in past life regression and between lives, which is more of a spiritual sort of afterlife type of experience. So yeah, been doing it for about over 30 years.
Wow, amazing. You don't look old enough to do it.
It's my 50th birthday on December. So
Oh,
I've booked
nice.
myself a little trip to Madeira to go climbing some mountains. So a nice little kind of 50 half century. Where does the years go?
Happy birthday, early happy birthday.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So, tell us about how you got into this hypnotherapy since you started at such a young age, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess as I was young, I was a curious little guy. I was always into uh, ghosts and aliens and wondering why pyramids are in Mexico and pyramids are over in Egypt and how does that happen? So I was really curious, but hypnosis, I think maybe about 13, I think I saw it on a TV show and just wondered, what is that? And I can remember trying to, I watched, try to hypnotize my brother or my cousin and it was when I was at college at 17. I went to the library and and there was no internet back in 1991. So I basically found a book. It wasn't basically hypnotherapy, but it was just or hypnosis. It was more of a sort of psychology book with a little bit about hypnosis. So I figured it out, and that's where I started. Past life regression was my little brother at 6, was my first ever person that I hypnotized. He was a um, married with a kid, and he was what was he was he wrote children's books. So from there, it was just fascinating. Started doing past life regression just for fun with people, and um, fast forward, I don't know what did I say there, 30 odd years. I do it full time. Probably been doing it full time for about the last 6 years. Before that, it was more of a sideline type of thing as I was an accountant. But here I am doing it now full time.
Very cool. I know how it is because I was also into it from a very young age, but but then I had to go into the financial world. I was a CFO of
Hmm.
a public company. But it was tagging at me the spiritual. That's the strongest part in us, right? The
Yeah,
spiritual part.
yeah, that's it. I think it's what we are. I think we are spiritual. We're spiritual beings, and we kind of forget that. Just in the same way, I think nature is a very big sign for us as well that of what we're part of. That nature is creation, and that we're part of that nature. Yet we sort of separate ourselves from that a little bit. So it's all around us. It's everything that is spiritual.
Yes, definitely. We do forget that we are having a body experience in the spirit and not the other way around. But I'm
Yeah.
hoping that we can remember it more and more because it's so important for what's coming up. I'm curious when you hypnotize your brother, did you find any connections with him from the past?
Personally, no, it was the only thing that I got from that session. It was so long ago, so I'm basically get shreds of memories, I think, of that session. But when I have hypnotized him since then and did other sessions, he was a doctor in Africa and stuff. But that one, all I remember was just asking him these questions, and it was that he was worried. It was actually, this is a 6-year-old being really worried about the fact that he's dying and that who will look after his. Oh, sorry, I didn't tell you that he's had a skin disease. and um, he was worried that he was leaving his kids and his wife behind. He was giving me place names. But way back at that point, I hadn't read anything. I hadn't done anything with the past life. So I was figuring it out as I went along. So like nowadays, you can ask people to look into the eyes of that person. Do they look familiar? And they'll maybe say, that's my aunt, or that's my gran, or that's my mum, or so you get that kind of link. But back then, it was just really his little family, I think, that came up in that session, and how he was feeling. Probably the session might not even lasted 10 minutes, 20 minutes or something, but that was the point where it piqued my interest. And I just thought, not only does hypnosis work, this is cool, I can do this now, but here's a whole something to be explored that probably isn't explored enough.
Right. So, before I get to your work now, I'm curious, I don't know, can you like self-hypnotize and go into past lives or in between lives or anything of the sort?
No, I think it was something I never. This is the funny thing. Someone was asking me that quite recently, and I seem to be it was like a facilitator. I didn't even know anybody else that did it. So I never really knew much about self-hypnosis way back. So I just found myself being the person that would bring everybody to these journeys, and probably as I continued like that, I never went self-exploring. I have done a couple of sessions now since then. So I've got a past life. It seemed to be like America, maybe back in the sort of times when people were immigrating from, well, just after the time a lot of Europeans came to America, and I was living in a little hut, and I was this little girl. So I don't visualize brilliantly, and this is one of the things about past lives is some people are very visual, but then there's some people that experience in different ways, and so mine was vague visual, but more of a knowing and an awareness. But I was living in this wooden hut type of thing, a little cabin. My mum was, uh, she wasn't very happy because my father was always away in business somewhere. But I was this little girl that would go down into the forest or the woods and play around and seeing little creatures in the ground and the birds and just being fascinated by nature. And the one thing about sessions for me is that they've always got some meaning. Whether it's a healing meaning or a self-discovery, and in that session for me, I recognized as much as there was a storyline to it that I get married and I met someone and I was a little bit like my mother. I ended up with somebody who was never there and I had a son this time. So I had that little story. But the key thing for the session for me was a reminder of nature, as we mentioned earlier. That was my fascination in that life with nature. Was just I would love to go to the forest and look around and see all these life and everything growing. So for that session, that was the message for me. But apart from a couple of day types of sessions, I don't do a lot of self hypnosis. Probably too busy. I think it's like one of these things. I always remember my brother was a chef, and he would come home and he says, "I don't want to cook anything. I cook all day," and he would eat rubbish all the time. And I think it's when it's your job, you seem to do that, and then you sort of get away from it for the rest of it. And I've played in bands as well. I used to be a singer and a keyboard player at one point, playing on weekends. And while I was doing that, I didn't do much with hypnosis. But then when I moved in full time to hypnosis, the music sort of came back to me as a sort of bit of fun again, a little bit of something I enjoyed. But because I've been doing it all those years, I never listened to any music or took any interest in it. So I think it's like when you focus a lot into something, um, you look for something alternative, I guess, like a pastime or other recreational things. And I guess hypnosis has became a little bit of my job now. So that's where I like music now. So it's flips back and forward.
Hmm, very cool. I know, I mean, there's a lot to be said about nature. Um, I feel like one of a part of our job is to bring awareness to people, right?
Yeah.
And like nature has been speaking louder and louder. Um, I wish we could all listen to it more and honor it, respect it and follow it more because I feel like it will help us
Yeah,
become more aware, right?
yeah. Well, it's magnificent. It's something phenomenal, way beyond our even comprehension, and how things grow and how you can burn a whole forest to the ground, and within the embers of that burnt forest is the technology to regrow the forest. So nature's it's a fantastic system. We take it for granted, um, but it's creation. This is the thing I've came to recognize is that we're not. We see us again. We keep distancing ourselves or taking ourselves out as separate for nature. But when you look to science or quantum physics, you start to see that everything is just built by atoms. And within atoms, there's nothing but quarks. So it's showing you that we're in this, it's like a big, for me, it's like a big computer game that we're in. And we're the character within the game. So, but I suppose it's I guess it's an energy or created conscious energy that creates Earth, that creates the world that we live in, the universe that we live in, and also we are part of that same energy. So for me, is that everything is this God consciousness. Earth is part of that God consciousness. So it's a not so much an illusion, but it's a perception that we've got that we're in this physical world, but from a quantum physics point of view, there is no physical. It's all an energy. It's a construct. So it's for me, it's about recognizing that we're part of it all, and we're all part of it. We're all one with it, and I guess we probably abuse it sometimes as well. But um, it's just that I think, and that's where nature and creation. That's the reminder back to us of who we are and what we're part of. And I think that's why people get so much from nature because it's this unconscious reminder, I think.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and a couple of points that I want to make about that is, it's so hard for us at this stage of the game, awareness wise, to to understand how we're part of everything in terms of, let's say, even, I give this example as the simplest example. When I drive down the street and a driver in front of me doesn't go as fast as I want him to go, and he's on the leftmost lane, I get upset about it. Or I
Hmm.
used to, let me put this way, I used to get upset about it. The thing is that I want to say is that when we criticize someone else is actually affecting us, so we are part of everything. Whatever we put out there is affecting us in that negative way if we put it negatively. So
Yeah,
I wish there was, I mean, your work does that, but I wish there was a way to help people um, start thinking from a perspective of unity and oneness, that we are affecting, everything affects us and we affect everything. That's how it works.
yeah. And this is I mean, there's a lot of talk of, so we've got this idea of an ascension into a new earth. Um, and I think one of the things is it's recognizing that we are responsible for that. It's not something that we just wait for and it will magically happen. I think the evolution and the growth of humanity is, in fact, was it Lao Tzu or something that said the greatest gift man can give is something to do with um, I guess it's your own self growth, basically. I can't remember what the little phrase is, but it's really by you working on yourself and um, bettering yourself and advancing yourself, you raise. If everybody did that, the whole consciousness raises. So it's recognizing that everything that we need to do is our responsibility. It's within us to grow, to better. And as you said, it's like when someone passes by and cuts you up on a road or something. It's I guess if you get angry, that's your own emotion. That's your responsibility. So does it actually make anything any better just by it only gets to you. You'll suffer from that anger. You'll be raging. You'll be in a bad mood. But really, it's something that's happened. So it's really about how we respond. And even in life, I think it's always about the choices also that we make because our life is an accumulation of many, many choices. Many of them are actually unconscious. So it might be getting up for work in the morning, brushing your teeth, having a shower, having a cup of coffee, a breakfast, going to work the same route that you take, driving the same car. Um, this is a sort of repeating cycle. But you're making these choices unconsciously, most of them, and you just repeat and repeat. And I guess this is where we take our power is by recognizing that we are creating our reality, we're creating our lives, and by making different choices or better choices or growing, dealing with the fears that we might have that help prevent us from having those, to make those better choices, we grow ourselves, we elevate and we will ascend and to become better, better people. And by doing that, I guess it also would be for the ones that do that, then other people will see shift in you and it may actually then affect other people. So I think for me, this is what it is. There is this path that we're on of, I guess we've always been on it. We're always growing and ascending in some way, but it's important that we all recognize that we're responsible as well.
Absolutely. And it's so important that we do our own work. Um, I know for myself, I'm going to share something that I always, go to classes and expand and get, new tools or at least try to stretch my awareness. Um, and it's so funny because one of the tools that I always end up giving clients is communicating with your inner child. Um,
Mhm.
and you know how when it's a shadow, we don't see it, right? Just
Yeah.
uh, this therapist cousin pointed to me that I have this that sometimes I react from this little child, in my home, and I never thought that I did that because I'm always so aware of it. So my point being is that we that give the tools to other people also need to work on ourselves all the time. It's important for us
Yeah.
to look at what we can contribute for in ourselves, that because the better vessel that we are. I say vessel because for me I channel, but I'm sure that you're a vessel also for awareness, for
Mhm.
the cleaner the vessel, the better we can help uh, facilitate things. And of course, firstly is for us to expand our awareness. We need to have a clear and clean vessel. Um, so tell me some interesting stories that you've had along the years of people that you've taken under, both for past life and for in between is very fascinating.
Yeah. So it's funny because I've done so many now. I talk with thousands, and it's always hard to try and think of some of them. So what I've generally got now is this sort of mixture of it all. And I guess for me, this is where my growth is. I grow. I'm lucky. I'm very lucky to be able to work with so many people and see the sort of things that come up. And I guess it's the over. I guess it's a sort of an overview of the purpose of it all. So, I mean, things like past lives. I shares my brother's one, but in terms of some of the past lives, you'll generally find that a lot of them are um, sometimes simple lives that might just be that they're living in some little house somewhere, or the first thing they see is cobbled stones, and they live in a some kind of little flat type house, maybe from however long ago. But the beauty about each of the sessions, sometimes they seem very boring, but the the beauty of them is that there's learning within them. So it might be that they're in a difficult relationship. In fact, I've just had one pop into my head. I don't know if I should tell you, but maybe I might. But it's always about it might be about a relationship. It might be about solitude, or so there's always some learning, some purpose to the life. I'll tell you this story. I'll need to try and change it. I don't got to watch what I say because I guess client sessions are confidential. So I'll try and. So there was someone I worked with, who how can I change this around a little bit to make it, um, so yeah, it turned out that
And we don't know
it,
the name or anything,
yeah,
so
well, so it turns out that there was this girl that did the session, and really pretty girl, really sort of obviously took care of herself and everything. But when she did the session, um, she was she'd married a butcher. It was the guy she married, father owned the butcher shop, but when eventually they were married, he stopped working, and it ended up that he doesn't wouldn't work, so she had to work to find money. And when I asked her, how do you find the money to survive? And she says, I sell myself. And so the interesting thing is after the session, she was a little bit, that wasn't what I was expecting. So I don't think she wanted to hear that she was a prostitute in her past life. But the beauty of the session was that she had showed amazing resilience and strength in a situation where the husband that she married didn't work, wasn't obviously maybe had some, but it wouldn't have been called mental health issues way back then when it happened. But um, basically, it was about the way that she had been able to sort of uh, provide for that family, for being able to sort of show that strength to do something that probably wasn't pleasant, to make money and to survive and to get along. And generally a lot of past life, that's a little bit what it's like. It's a lot about the challenges, the difficulties, the relationships. And the interesting thing about the relationships, which I'll come to in a second, is as you mentioned earlier, often they're all people that are in our lives at the moment, but in a different form. So, so the past lives that can be quite boring and sometimes not very interesting, but it's when you pass the death point, which then takes you into this what we call a call between lives. There's a lot of people like Dr. Michael Newton that he coined the phrase "life between lives." Um, for me, I don't like any of the names. I use between lives because it gives you that idea of it's obviously an earth life to the between life. For me, it's an awakening that we reawaken to a wider and bigger perspective. But at the moment, we're locked into this little sort of limited perspective to learn and go through the dramas of life. And but
Yeah.
uh, but this is the thing with the between lives. Then you start to get the meaning of the life. Guides might come forward, maybe your higher self that you speak to that comes to talk through the person. But it's getting, why was that person shown the past life? And this is where it all starts to get interesting because you see the meaning in it and you see, so sometimes it's about, usually there's a purpose even for the session. Now the person, someone might be doing it for fun, but it's almost like there's some part of the mind that knows that they need to do this. So it might bring up that there's something that they need some kind of healing from. So it might be that they've got fear of water or a fear of speaking out, and it might originate in one of these past lives. So it's like the mind takes the opportunity to show you the life that it really needs to work on. And it's the between life side that you then see why uh, why things were set up that way. It may be that and that other one, as I gave an example, I can't remember what the actual message was in that, but it could be that the actual husband had decided that he wouldn't work or whatever to make that person to give that person the opportunity to be stronger, to grow and to stand on their own 2 feet. And so and there's one thing that always gets, I've had it mentioned so many times, and it's that there is no accident in what's happening. That there's always some kind of purpose for us to grow and to learn. And even through some of the worst atrocities, beautiful things can come out of it, like a war, a World War II or something, where there's lots of people dying, which is terrible. But at the same point, it's also given other people opportunities to, I don't know, like if you think about the ones that maybe hidden someone underneath the floor to save them from soldiers, and they're risking their own life to save somebody else. So there's something beautiful that's happening there, that people are taking risks and selflessness to help somebody, other people, and to, so even when there's challenges and bad situations, it's a gift also to then to be better, to to be strong. There's a really good film called Hacksaw Ridge. I don't know if you've heard of that, but the film's all about this guy that won't fire a rifle, and it's a true story. And then so an American guy won't fire a rifle but goes to war. They tried to get him out of the army, but he didn't leave the army. He ends up he's still there, but he won't. He was a medic. But it ends up in the end, he saves, I can't remember, like 12, 20 people or something like that. He's going up and climbing up this ridge and pulling all these dead bodies down. And there's somebody that stood by his values. He wouldn't kill anybody, but he ended up a hero, a big hero, because of the bravery that he showed to go and save people. And so, in all these adversities, there's always opportunities to be a strength, to be a light. And I guess they wouldn't be able to be that light without, I guess, that darkness there to shine into.
Wow, so fascinating. I know for me, I could see past life. I don't take them under regression, but I could see their past lives. And
Yeah.
many times when I tell them a couple, two or three of their past lives, or even one, they ask me, "Wait, are you talking about past life or are you talking about this life?" Because the pattern that shows up, their higher self shows me, is the pattern that they came here to heal or to break through, or so it's always the same pattern that they have to go through, maybe under a different story, right?
Yeah.
um yeah, it's really fascinating. And I'll give an example so people can understand. For example, I have a lot of clients lately that have a hard time conceiving, getting pregnant. And some of the stories that I see is either they had too many kids, and when they left that life, they said that they want to experience life without having to take care of kids all
Mm.
the time. Or some of them, like a couple of them, I saw that they were hiding from intruders, and they accidentally or had to shut their baby up, and by mistake the baby died.
Mm.
So they're so traumatized in their cellular memory. When we come into our body, we remember, not consciously but subconsciously, right? We remember things, so we need to heal those things.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, I guess we're getting, it's funny because we keep talking separation, like nature and everything. And I guess even past life for me is, it's the extension of experience of life. And that's what I find as well, is there's a lot of people that are affected by the fears that they're carrying. So it's just a good way to look at it is, it's just the same as this life. Now, if I asked, so I always say this to clients, if I give you a book and asked you to go back to, so we call it primary school. I don't know if you, is it kindergarten or something, but if you had to go back to that very first day, and every single day after that till you leave high school, write on each page what you did, what you learned that day. Now you would be looking at probably me thinking, how could I possibly remember all that? I have no clue. I've got a vague memory of a field trip, and I've got a vague memory maybe of a day the teacher read a book, or a bully upset me or something. So,
Yeah.
but through all that journey of school, you've learned to read, you've learned to write, you've learned about history, you've learned maths and English, and you've probably learned how to sort of function within a social group. So there's different types of kids. There'll be maybe disruptive kids, there'll be nice kids, and you'll find friends. There's an authority figure of a teacher that you then learn to respect. And so through that whole period, you've developed abilities, understandings, beliefs, and really you don't remember all the events of how it all happened and what days it happened, but you are the sum of it all. These behaviors, these things will still probably play out in some ways in your life. And past life for me is something similar, is that we carry all the resource, we carry all the abilities, we carry some of the fears as well of some of these lives, like you said, some traumatic stuff. But it's almost like an accumulation that makes us who we are now. Um, and the interesting thing for me is when I work clinically, I work in a parts way or an ego state way, and the idea is that we've got a lot. So when you talk about inner child, we probably have multiple inner childs, because what happens every time we go through some experience, we will develop some kind of coping mechanism, some kind of coping part of us, an ego part of us that will then come to the forefront to deal with whatever it is. So an example I'll give to clients and I try and explain this is, if you think about your best friend coming to your front door. Now, you won't even think about it, but suddenly your voice may go up in pitch. So how are you doing? It's really good to see you. Your hands will come out. You'll be smiling. Whereas if it's a salesperson that starts being really pushy and puts his foot on your door, you'll be saying, "Like, get your foot out of my door. I'm not in." So you've got this different persona. Again, if it was a little dog, maybe rubbing his little head and, "Look at you, you're beautiful, aren't you?" And tickling his little belly. But you're not going to go to your best friend when they come to the door and go, "Look at you," and rub her head and tickle her belly. So
Yeah.
we've got all these different constructs of personality, I guess, or persona that comes up to the forefront at different circumstances. And when we go through traumatic times, maybe like for a child, so I could give you an example of someone who had tried to commit suicide quite a few times. She had depression. When I worked with her, discovered that the part that was holding the depression was a child part of her that was told that her parents, so they were really wealthy, they didn't give her a lot of attention. So she had the beliefs deep down that she wasn't loved, that she wasn't good enough. And this is what held, that's why that part of her was depressed. So for her, there'd have been other parts going, "I shouldn't feel like this. This does not make my life good. I don't want to feel like this." Yet here's this part of you that is doing it. So that's what I sort of do, is to try and work with these different parts. And the way that I then see it is that if you look at it spiritually, now there's one thing that popped into my mind was a while back was, now I wouldn't say I'm religious in any way, but I always remember that line that God made man in his image. Now I had a really cool session maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago with somebody who, with a between lives session, that spoke about how in the beginning there was this consciousness, this energy, but to start to understand itself, it separated from itself to observe itself. And then that's how life began, is that it would then separate and separate to the point then we become, this is what a soul is. A soul is a fragment, a little part of this whole consciousness. So we're part of God. And this is what I then see is, when we look down to that level of who we are, as we see ourselves as, so I'm Stephen. Stephen's a, a multitude of different sort of constructs that have kind of evolved to deal with all different circumstances. Like we said, the front person at the front door, the little dog, and past life is also an extension of that as well, where again, it's similar sort of constructs that have been built to deal with things that then might hold a fear of, like we said, water, or a fear of, like you said, maybe having a child, because in that past life they lost the child and they wouldn't want to go through that pain again, or the child died. So that sits within us. So in a way, as I guess it's God is this fragmented, multiple, many parts of which are all experiencing different ways. And it's a little bit, I'm sure you said it a little earlier, to recognize that we're all one, that even that person that's maybe in the car that cut us up, in a way, that's an opportunity then for us to deal with that situation, where it might be an annoyance or an angry, makes you angry, but then you've got to think, okay, maybe that person has gifted me an opportunity to how I can control my emotions and to not let something get to me. I'm safe and nothing happened. So for me, it's just this, everything keeps breaking down into all these parts. And that's how I find it's very powerful in the way that when I work with people, it's maybe a child part that comes forward, which we can call our inner child, because that part is still acting like a child. It will sometimes be, it won't speak to you, or it will go in a bad mood, or so. When you're working with a client, you've got to actually speak to them sometimes in a very nurturing way, in a very sort of gentle way, to sometimes bring these parts out, because sometimes they're traumatized, they're parts that don't want to come out, they're scared, they're fearful. So
Right.
yeah, so that's my the whole idea of parts and how we're all multiple construct personas that are constructed into create who we are, some kind of energetic constructs maybe that of personality.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good point. Um, so like I know that I sometimes I need to give homework to the part that is
Mm.
the saboteur, right? That always has that voice that is negative, or you're not good enough, like you
Yeah,
said, or yeah. Um, so definitely we are like a matrix of different
mm.
personalities and different um, you know, whatever experiences we had from past life, like you said, they they come into this matrix that we are who we are. Um, so I'm wondering, from what you said, I gathered that when someone is under hypnosis, you talk to that part that needs the to know things, or
Yeah.
my
Well,
question, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, go. I'll give you. I'll give
Uh,
you this quickly. Yeah.
yeah.
So you talk to that part, but the one cool thing to remember is that that part probably creates the behaviors that the person doesn't want or wants to heal or resolve. But the interesting thing is that there's also another part of the mind that maybe is more mature and recognizes that's not the way. And it's probably that this part here is confused, that holds beliefs that isn't conducive to the way that you want to live your life. It's based on maybe an old experience. So the coolest thing about this is it's like, well, there's a problem and there's the answer. So you sort of bring these parts together to help the mind resolve. And that's why I say I'm more of a facilitator. I'm here to help the mind help itself. And all the resources are in the mind. Sometimes higher entities come through. Sometimes it's people's past relatives that sometimes come through, but they'll come
Mm.
and give them what they need. Um, so yeah. So the question that I interrupted you with, can you remember
No,
what it was?
that's good. You partly answered it. I was going to
Uh,
ask you if in between lives, if the higher self shows up, or the guides, or so you partly answered it.
yeah, it's cool because you can be doing clinical work where you're just dealing with a fear of something or some limitation that the person or maybe other people that are very high up in maybe a kind of the business world, but they struggle with simple things like confidence or so it's but there is sometimes I've had people that are completely not spiritual in any kind of way. Yet I remember once it was like this a guy who had this woman that came in and she was sitting telling me what had happened. What happened in it when he was young, and it was a lot of trauma and stuff. And she said he's not ready for that yet, but he needs to work on that. And so I'd seen this person for quite a few sessions, and it got to the point where I would be asking this woman, okay, so what is it that he needs to work on today? Well, so it was strange, but there's like almost like a guide coming forward. Sometimes they'll say that they've always been with them, or that they'll say that they're a guide and they're there to help, and they can guide the session. So it's almost like I can sit back and just say, okay, well, what do we ask, and do we bring that? What do we bring forward? And so
Mm.
it's fascinating. It shows you that we're not alone in this journey. We're actually supported and helped, and they want to help us. So it's and help is there, and help is out there as well. If you struggle, then I guess there's people like us that then can use ways to help. I mean, for me, hypnosis is simply a focusing of the mind. That's all that we're doing. We're really helping the mind focus more internally, and and by doing that, it takes you away from this more conscious surface state that we sort of get used to go deeper into older these older parts of us, or these parts that are traumatized, to help them. And sometime along the way, I mean, that's the clinical. Sometimes along the way there'll be these sometimes entities or guides or helpers that will come forward. When we do it more between life, that's the first thing that comes, is the guide. We ask for help, and someone will appear in some form and start to kind of give us. I'll always ask, can you tell us why that person was shown the past life? And then you get this whole understanding, and sometimes you're sitting thinking, well, that's really cool, I never thought of it that way. And then you say, is there something needs to be healed from that life? And it may be that they're holding a fear. So can you, but there was one girl, um, maybe about a month ago, 2 months ago, had a fear of dogs, really bad phobia. And she says, we can do a past life regression, but sorry, a between life session, but maybe we need to I've got a really bad phobia of dogs. So could we maybe do that in another session? Now, I asked in the session, while we were doing it, I just thought, while we were speaking to this guide, I says, she's got a phobia of dogs. Is there something that you can do to help that? And she said that this guide put their hand on her head. And so after that, I thought, well, did anything happen? I don't know. So about 3 days later, I got a video on my Instagram from her, just playing with a dog. So that was whatever happened there. It helped her with that fear of dogs.
Oh, oh, wow. Amazing. So when you say a gate, excuse me, do you
Or a guide. That's my Scottish accent. So a spirit guide, not a gate. Yeah,
guide, a guide.
yeah.
Sorry.
That's the first person this has ever happened with. I've did other radio shows with people on the West Coast, and for some reason when I say a guide, as in a spirit guide, um, they seem to think I'm saying gate. Got a friend who actually did a radio show in Seattle years ago, and that was one of the first things she says, "What do you mean by gate?" And I'm going, I don't know. And I realized it was guide. So
Yeah,
I've actually done a few interviews, and I've had to explain that first. I forgot there, but if I say guide, it's gate. So it's the accent.
it's
Unfortunately,
perfect.
well, yeah,
But I'm glad we made it clear for everybody,
yeah,
for me. Um, so um did you have the either in between lives or past lives, did you have some um stories of or incidences of extraterrestrial life that came through?
yeah. Many. So I guess my understanding is that I guess extraterrestrial life, or aliens, or whatever we want to call them,
Hmm.
many ways you find sometimes that the people that you're actually working with, they're then shown a life or an experience where they actually look like these beings, and they find that they are actually part of the beings, but they've came here to help, to work here, and these other beings that are actually out there, in there, wherever, are actually helping them. So I get that quite regularly, and it's funny sometimes, because there's some of the times they say the clients, they maybe don't have that understanding of people that do this type of work, and then channeling or getting access to other entities or aliens, and they're sort of sort of seeing this life and as some kind of different form or a different coloured skin or something. And I always remember one funny one, which was done in this very room actually, with a chair. If you can see it over there, that's where
Yeah.
the client sat. And I always remember she said that she was some kind of like she said the best way she could describe this was she was like an intelligent, conscious jellyfish. She said they seemed to live in this. It seemed like water, but it wasn't water, and this thing was moving around. And I asked if it had a name, and she sort of says that she couldn't say it. I said, well, try and pronounce it, and it made me laugh. It came out something like something like that. And so, but yeah, it's a common thing that there seems to be that we are sometimes part of these other species or other races. I mean, you've probably heard those many things. There's one of the most famous books is probably Barbara Insiniak that wrote the Ringers of the Dawn. So it's a classic book about the Palladians.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot already written about how there is. I guess it's where the ideas of star seeds come from, and where there's a lot of people coming to Earth, and I've had this through sessions as well, that are here to help, that are bringing maybe more of an advanced understanding to help people of Earth who are still muddling through and struggling. Um, and yeah, and I think even up to last week I had a session with someone that was being shown this other non-Earth life that they lived. And again, they were taller. I think they had blue skin or something. So, um, it's another fascinating aspect, but it starts to show you that um, well, again, we're not alone, but there is so much more to, um, I guess, experience, and that we're focused in this Earth life as it's a limited perception, but I think there's a purpose to it because it's the dramas of the life, it's the difficulties that actually then challenge us to, like if we talk about that guy again from that movie, Hacksaw Ridge, there was some guy who came here and they've made a film out of him. So it showed probably millions of people how beautiful a person can be by standing, taking abuse at the army, and but then to hold to his values that he won't kill, take another life, and then to become almost getting kicked out of the army to then becoming a hero because he saves so many of his actual other soldiers. So there's one example of just how difficult circumstances and situations give opportunity for people to shine and to do better, to make examples. And I think that's probably where these starseed ideas come from, is that there is beings on this planet as humans that maybe they don't even know it, but um, they are, I guess, being themselves and showing examples of better ways to be. And it's like we said at the start, I think that's what it's all about. It's all about us individually raising our own abilities, our own um, to grow and to raising the whole of the consciousness.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it's about, raising the frequency. And like you said, each of us that works on ourselves and raises our own frequency is raising everybody's, because
Mm.
it's like when the ocean goes up. I forgot the saying, but when the ocean goes up, all the boats are up as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah. Um, well, I'm sad to say that our time is almost up. I want to give you a couple of minutes to talk about, do you do these sessions on Skype or on Zoom or
On
as
Zoom, yeah.
well? Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually do most of them now on Zoom. I've kind of stopped doing face-to-face sessions. So they are pretty much on Zoom. Most of my clients they're all over the world. Actually, that
Oh,
client, was it 2 days ago, who I asked, "How did you find me?" It was somewhere like Slovakia or something, and he said he
Mm.
Googled Europe's best
Nice.
therapist, and apparently I came up top. I don't know how that happened, but most of my
Yeah.
clients are all abroad. Um, so yeah, I do all the sessions over Zoom.
Nice. And do you do classes and any travel with like retreats or anything like that?
I do sometimes I do group past life regression workshops and stuff, but the most of my work is really client based. I actually quite like working one to one because I think that's where I've learned so much, and it's quite rewarding as well. That whether you're doing past life, clinical hypnotherapy, everything has got the same. I used to think they're two separate things. How can I be a clinical hypnotherapist dealing with a spider phobia, and then I'm supposed to promote myself doing all the spiritual stuff of past life, between life, that might put people off. But I just thought, do you know what? This is what I do. I do both, and it may actually appeal to somebody that wants to do clinical hypnotherapy, but they're very interested in spiritual. So, but from all what I've recognized is that it's all helping people, whether it's the past life is resolving a fear, whether clinical hypnotherapy is resolving a fear, whether it's a guide that's coming, that's a spirit guide, is helping somebody. It's that's the beauty of it all. It's just it's a way of helping people to bring understanding for people, and I guess in that little way, it's a contributor towards raising this vibration.
Right. Yeah. I do feel that that sometimes when people come for a clinical, it opens the door for them to their spirituality. And I think, yeah,
Yeah,
hypnosis is such a great way to get into it.
yeah. I used to have a friend that was a medium
Hmm.
years ago, and I think he passed like about 3 years ago. But he,
Yeah.
I remember being with him at one point, and he said he was doing a show, and he said, "Okay, I need to get myself into the zone," and he just kind of did this, and I could see that he was focusing his mind, and I looked at it and I thought, that's self-hypnosis. You're basically focusing internally into your mind to access. And I think that's right, is when you do hypnosis, you're taking yourself away from all the noise, all the distraction, and taking yourself more internally. And that is the beauty of hypnosis, whether it's to discover past lives, whether it's to access more guides and spiritual aspects, or whether it's to focus in on those parts of you that hold the limitations, the difficulties, the traumas, and to help them to resolve. So that's why I always say hypnosis is it's a focus. It's an inner focus that gives you access to everything.
Right. Good. So, before I say goodbye, could you tell them how to get in touch with you, whoever is listening to us and would like to have a session with you?
Sure. So I have a website that you can contact me through, which is https colon slash slash Stephen Towill. I say the HTTPS because for some reason it doesn't have, if you put the www, it doesn't work. So, but it's
Oh,
Stephen
okay.
Towill. You could Google it, stephentowill,
Right.
.com. And there's a contact form that could get in touch. Instagram as well. I've even got a booking button on Instagram on my
Um,
page, so they could click on book and just book straight in if they wanted to book a session with me, or DM me through Instagram if they're interested. So they're probably the two best mediums, I think, to get in touch.
Great. And I just want to say to everybody that follow Stephen on Instagram because he posts such funny things. You always
Mm.
make my day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for your time and for the work that you do in this world. I really appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks. It's been a pleasure again to talk to you.
Thanks. Bye for now.
Bye
Bye.
bye.